I think Penix, I don't know what his comp is, but he was willing, with a better receiving crew, to sit longer in the pocket, sees the field well, beautiful deep ball sideline thrower, was much more willing, had more physical courage to sit in the pocket to the last second, muddy pocket, get hit. Bo Nix is Derek Carr. Generally, first, second read, wants to get it out. Decisive, accurate, gets it out. You can move the pocket with him, but that's not what he is. Very much to me, Derek Carr, where professional, accurate, but didn't wait an extra beat, played with a much cleaner pocket, didn't wait the extra beat, got it out, got it completed. Underneath stuff where I thought he could have waited another half second to a second. Penix will just sit down there until his guys get deep. I said this earlier. What I don't like about what I see with Colorado and USC programs, this is still college football, and I'm for the NIL, but they become very coach quarterback dominant. I'm the man. Oregon, Washington have first-round quarterbacks. They're about the program. And it was so refreshing to go, I want there to be a gap between pro football and college football. Like, I like the cheerleaders, the bands, the collegiate feel. I don't have a problem with NIL. But I think USC has gotten sloppy. I think they're about Caleb making great plays, too much Heisman talk. I think Shedeur Sanders, Deion Sanders, I love the mission. But again, like, it's not a complete football program. And I love college football. And part of what I love about it is its history and Penn State's uniforms and the big house. And I think USC feels a bit bougie to me. And they've fallen in love with the brand USC, and they don't really do anything well. They don't run well. They don't pass block. They don't tackle well. And in a strange way, as I watched them play Notre Dame, I said, they deserve this. They've gotten a little too much love too quickly. And Washington and Oregon, having sat there, those are buttoned up, do multiple things well. Kalen DeBoer, Dan Lanning, really well coached. Excellent NFL players, but it's about the community, the programs, the stadium, the fan. I mean, Autzen and Husky Stadium are about as loud as college football gets. Yeah. And so as I watch that game and then I watch USC Notre Dame, and I'm like, I found Washington and Oregon really easy to root for, and USC increasingly kind of a hard watch and hard to root for. Something magical happens when the third quarter ends and the fourth quarter begins. The energy changes. The fourth quarter, that's where games are won. And in business, it's where sales teams become legends. The fourth quarter. That's why HubSpot built Sales Hub, to give sales reps the deal-making tools they need to win in the fourth quarter and close the year strong. Sales Hub, prospecting workplace, organizes your schedule, your to-do lists, your goals, all in one place to save your team time in the precious fourth quarter. Smart sequences help sales reps close deals faster than ever. Plus, AI forecasting helps you accurately predict future successes. And with an easy-to-use management tool, reps can find, track, and close deals all in one place, which means less hoping for deals and more crushing targets. Put your sales team on the fast track now to winning the fourth quarter with Sales Hub. Learn more at HubSpot.com/sales.
Listen, I know you've talked to him. I like Lincoln philosophically from a football sense. I don't agree with a lot of the things, the way that he looks at the game. Obviously, the quarterback matters, but he just doesn't care about defense. I mean, he strictly doesn't. And his ethos as a coach is represented by the way they play, and there's a softness to it. There just is. And I think, look at some of the things that have happened this year. The banning of the reporter. Like, what are we doing? That feels so, non-Power 5, or such a small-minded move to me. And then there's another thing that I've been told by NFL people. He shut it down for NFL scouts after week 2, I think, till the Cal game, where every other program, they always say about Nick Saban, you could knock on the door at 3 a.m. and someone's there to let you in. And the one thing I've heard about Oregon and Dan Lanning, where does he come from? Kirby Smart, who's a Nick Saban NFL operation. You go to their practice last year, you go to their practice this year, it looks the same. Same thing with Washington. It's a very consistent place. And I think sometimes in this transfer world, and talking to a lot of scouts that go to these practices, they're like, you never know what you're going to get from year to year. Think about Pete Carroll's in their heyday, or Chip Kelly or Harbaugh. The same group of players were there 3 to 5 years, right? So the rivalry, the Notre Dame game mattered. Well, listen, I mean, I would have signed Lincoln Riley too, but Lincoln Riley is a Texas guy, right? It's where he's from, Texas Tech, Oklahoma. The USC Notre Dame rivalry means a lot to a lot of people, but to him, to Caleb, does it mean the same? You saw Oregon and Washington, some of those players, and listen, they got transfers too. But think about Bo Nix. What's he used to? Rivalry, Alabama, Auburn. Like he played, and listen, he had some flaws yesterday, but I was impressed just with his effort. Yeah. Obviously, watching all the kids in that game. To me, USC kind of tapped out. They kind of laid down. Same thing with Colorado. And that's what happens sometimes. What happened to the NBA? It kind of became a mercenary league. People don't care as much, right? When you get players, you get 53 transfers, you lose a game when you're up 29-0 to Colorado. You have no business losing at home. I mean, that was, let's face it, obviously the wide receiver made an incredible catch on the back of Travis Hunter, but still, that's a bad loss. To me, 48-20, Colin. it's one thing to lose. Listen, Oregon lost. You hang your head high. USC, that's an indictment on the program.
Yeah, and I think to your point is when you have a kind of a talent infusion, the danger of the transfer portal is that we that's why Colorado was so shocking to all of us, that they were good in week 1 and efficient. We're like, but over the course of time, you can go with friends, 5 or 6 friends on a road trip, and it works for 2 days. 10 days later, y'all hate each other, right? It's like there's something about family. And I feel like when I went to Washington, Oregon, I feel like there was so much depth in the programs. The players cared. They're crying. They care so much. They're so into everything, fight song on. And Washington and Oregon have transfers, but USC is like a transfer program.
Yeah.
And I think the longer the season goes on, their O-line play gets worse. They don't tackle. They don't run the football consistently. I don't blame it all on Caleb. He's running for his life. They can't. I mean, it's just he has to be a superhero on every.
But doesn't that speak to, like, let's use the NFL as an example right now. If Patrick Mahomes has a bad game, Andy and Veach have built the team, they can win. Today, Purdy barely throws for 100 yards. The Niners are in the game. The Browns, they're missing their starting quarterback, can't compete. Part of building a team, right? When your quarterback, he's a human being. Now, he was really bad. But when he has a bad game, can you compete? And they couldn't even, I mean, they weren't even close, right? Where the other two programs, for example, like Washington and Oregon, could have a down game from their quarterback and definitely still compete. The running back's really good. Yeah. Their other playmakers defensively, to me, Dan Lanning and Kalen DuBois, I've been saying this for a while. You can see the Kalen DuBois thing coming from a mile away. Ohio State, now they're going in the Big Ten. He's going to be placing these big programs. Ryan Day loses to Michigan again. The rumblings start. That's a guy that some of these big programs, not that Washington isn't, but they've never had those $100 million coaches yet. Maybe it's time. But the Ohio States of the world are going to start looking at him when you win games like that. I mean, that guy's a star. Dan Lanning's pretty damn good too, but Oregon pays.
Yeah, well, Phil Knight, opens the checkbook. So, it's a lot of people didn't like the conference realignment, but I got news for you. If you give me Oregon, Washington every year, the big dogs will still play. If you give me USC, UCLA, the city championship, I don't need USC to play the regional, Washington State, Oregon State, Arizona State. So it was, I like college football in person better than I like the NFL. I will say it was a national TV game, so there was a lot of TV timeouts, and you're sitting there. Thank God Montlake is so beautiful. So when you have 9 minutes, you're knocking down a beer, you're looking at the crowd, and you're looking at the water.
Do you think to me, he's a bigger version of Tua? The one thing with a player like Penix,
very interesting.
The only thing that makes me a little nervous, like with Tua, is the lack of mobility in the modern day game. We see how many sweet defensive linemen are all over the NFL because he throws the ball as beautiful as you're going to find at any level. It's just, can he move well enough? But how's he not going to be a top 10 pick?
Well, I think I couldn't come up with a comp. That's probably it. A bigger, stronger, more of a power thrower Tua. He throws a gorgeous ball, not really going to move much.
Tough.
And by the way, he had 2 ACL tears at Indiana. So he's got an injury history. That's a really good comp. I thought Bo Nix was Derek Carr. Michael Penix is a bigger, a stronger Tua. That's a really good comp. That's what it is. And that's really, yeah.
He was getting peppered there in the middle of the game. The scouts love, he was barely getting up, but he just kept getting back under center, kept getting a shotgun. It's like, God, this guy's tough. I mean, he's tough, obviously battling back from the ACL injuries, but in the middle of a game with that many people watching, I thought Oregon was playing fantastic. He just, that guy was relentless. And to me, the Dan Lanning going for it in the middle of the field, the momentum you give another team when you turn it over on downs, you just give them life, and to me, so it's a double whammy. It's one, you give them the ball back in the middle of the field, but you also, the excitement that goes to that other sideline. And I understand it's his MO to be kind of Brandon Staley-ish, but in that spot, you had really dominated the second half. Just make him go 85 yards.
Well, and I also think Dan, his brand, if he has one, is an aggressive guy. Yeah. He'll taunt people on social, smoke the cigar, the pregame speech. And so it's hard when you're an aggressive guy and you preach that and you get into that moment.
The punt.
Hey, we're punting, right? It's like, it's his brand. Whereas Kalen DeBoer is very humble, very under the radar about the players. He reminds me a lot of Chris Peterson. And, Peterson is behind the scenes. So they got DeBoer and then Chris Peterson's right behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And I think they took their ops guy from like Michigan. They spent like 7 figures on him. I think I'm right there. So let me tell you something. Washington's got money. They may not have Phil Knight money, but they got money, and they're going to have to start saving their pennies because Kalen DeBoer is going to get big time offers. And Washington may not be Ohio State or Michigan, but they are in that somewhere between like 7 to 12 program where environment, history. I don't know where Oregon's probably, Washington's got the natty, Oregon doesn't. You can look at Oregon and go, Phil Knight's the program, or it never exists.
Yeah.
Washington was great with Don James. They were good with Jim Owen, Don James, Rick Neuheisel, pretty good with Sark, Chris Peterson, now Kalen DeBoer. Like Washington is like Ohio State, maybe a little lesser, that when they get the right coach, they win 9-10 games and they're in the playoff picture. And this team's good. They're good.
Yeah, I mean, you and me are West Coast guys. I was thinking, meanwhile, Wisconsin and Iowa are playing like a 2-0 game. The Big Ten is lucky to add those two programs. They made the right decision. Obviously, USC, UCLA, a no-brainer, but those two programs, I mean, they're better right now than USC, clearly, on the football field. But that's those brands, and that beside Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, they fit right in. And honestly, on any given week, they could beat them as well.
Yeah, well, listen, I've gone to a lot of Husky games in driving windy rainstorms.
Yeah,
UCLA may struggle with the weather transition. Washington, Oregon are not.
No.